All right, let's give our attention now to this presentation. Go right ahead.
So I did Arles, city in France,
Yes.
and I tried to focus on two areas this time to get a little more information on them. First, Arles. It's the largest city in France today, and it's surrounded by banks of the Rhone River and the plains of Creuse.
You're saying it's the largest city in France today?
Population.
Bigger than Paris?
That's what I got.
All right, all right.
But it was also the largest in the time, the Roman times as well. But that's what it said on. It said current, and then when I went in, it said
Okay,
so.
all right, I'll take your word for it.
So after siding with Julius Caesar during his civil war against Pompey, the town was formally established as a Roman colony for Caesar's veterans in 46 or 45 BC, and it was a metropolis of Roman Gaul. You can see it's right, the star in the south there. So one thing is the baths of Constantine, and these baths were built in the 4th century AD when Emperor Constantine resided at Arles. The success of the thermal baths is due to the invention of hypocausts, which allowed hot air to be circulated under the floor of raised rooms thanks to small piles of bricks called suspensura, and the air would then travel up vertically through the channels called tubuli, which were placed inside the walls. So it's kind of like an ancient sauna. So they had.
I see your picture there.
So where the people are standing there, that would be underground, and so you wouldn't be there.
Right.
So the heat would be going
Like
through
where
that.
they're touching, that would be the floor.
Yeah, where
the
they're
right
touching
hand
would be the floor, where your feet would be. Yeah.
So the water would be heated from underneath and also the wall, inside the walls.
Right, because it was like hollowed out kind
Yeah.
of. Right.
Well, that's nice, and I can see why they have that under a roof, is because
Yeah, it's a modern roof. So.
you don't usually find the floor intact.
Yeah, there's a lot of.
A lot of times
Things
those
like
little, the area that's called the suspensura are sometimes only 2 or 3 feet high. And look at this, it looks to be about, I don't know how tall those people are, but almost 5 feet high, which shows you just how large they were. I've been to a lot of sites where they've had it, and it's only been 2 or 3 feet. But this is nice to show it, and also to show the floor intact, because many times it breaks out. Okay, very good.
So like I said, it's a modern roof, so that wouldn't be there when it was in use. So also the thermal baths were inextricably linked with the comfort of urban life during the Imperial Age, and combined physical exercise, which took place in the Pelestre training area, with baths which provided bodily hygiene. So this was a center, almost like a gym today, where it has a sauna, workout, and massages. So it had everything built in, and people would go there and they would do exercise or bathe or get massages. So the way it was used.
Palestra is usually outside the building, like in a courtyard, colonnaded courtyard. Well, maybe out here where those guys are off to the right. That's probably the Palestra there, or in the center, if that cutaway is correct. It's usually outside, and this allows them to exercise in the open air.
Yeah, and then also this is a model of what it was, so a model. The way it was used, the entire population, and started with women first, then men, sat in the sauna environment to sweat. Then they went to the hot baths, where the skin was splashed with boiling water and then scraped with a small scraper called a strigil. And then next they would go to the warm room and cold pool, ending the routine with a vigorous massage. And what I found interesting was like how they would go in like super hot water and steamed, but then they would go directly into like cold water. And what that actually does is it hardens the skin. And the Romans, especially the soldiers, would do that when they're in the field. And then I also had a friend in gymnastics, and he said what he would do is they would have them with their like washing their hands and have super hot water, and then they would already have a cold one running, and they go straight to that. And I'm like, oh, you did that? And it was like, yeah, it's like to harden your hands. And so I didn't know that at the time, but then researching this, that's like a link, like
right.
still doing it today in gymnastics, just like gets
Stealing from the
harder.
Romans, man.
Yeah, so that was interesting. And the entrance to the baths was free or almost free, so it was all paid for by like taxes, I assume. So it was open to the public through the taxes. And then there have been 3 thermal baths discovered in Arles, and the first was discovered on Place de la République in 1675, while the building of an obelisk was being made, and the bath is now underneath that monument. And another thermal construction whose layout remains hypothetical was constructed around the beginning of the 3rd century outside the ramparts to the south of the town in Arles. And this is one of the more intact ones today in Arles. So I picture that.
That's what a lot of kids do. They take a hypothetical bath.
Yeah.
Let's go and get the washcloth wet. Okay.
My next one was the amphitheater in Arles. So this was built in 90 AD, and so compared to the baths that were like a lot later, like the 4th century, and it could seat over 20,000 people, and it had over 120 arches, and a series of 2 galleries and staircases, and 2 levels of seating. And so you can see that usually with an amphitheater that big, like the town was prominent, so Arles was like a hopping place at that time. It's ranked the 20th largest amphitheater among those of the Roman world. So of all the ones today that we can see and look at, it's the 20th largest. And after the fall of the Roman Empire in the 5th century, the amphitheater was converted into a fortress encircling houses and chapels. So this is a drawing of that. And so it'd be like in the 1700s. They had houses, chapels, and towers built on the outside, so it just became like a defensive structure since it was already there. So repurposed it like that.
That's probably why it's so well preserved.
Because it was being used.
Because it was
yeah.
reused. You know, there was a very nice theater in Syria. I don't know if it's still a nice theater, but the reason that it was preserved is that in medieval times they took the theater, they dug a dry moat around it and made it into a fortress, and so that preserved it on up for hundreds of years later. So you often see that, and you see it too, like the church. Well, like for example, the Pantheon in Rome. Pantheon in Rome is in wonderful condition, unbelievable, but that's because it was converted into a church and was used right up until fairly modern times, till it became kind of a museum now. So that does help preserve things. Things need maintenance, right? Even you guys will need maintenance someday. Maybe not right now, but you will. I'll have to patch you together with some spackle. Okay, go ahead.
All right, so and this is an overhead shot today. The amphitheater, having a residential role, continued until the late 18th century, but that changed when in 1825 the writer Prosper Mérimée pushed to have it repurposed, and through this initiative the change to National Historical Monument began. And in 1826 exploration began on the expropriation.
That means they moved them.
Began on the houses built within the building, which ended by 1830, when the first event was organized in the area, a race of the bulls to celebrate the taking of Algiers.
Taking of Algiers.
Algiers.
Very nice. Very colonial. Okay.
So this guy pushed to have it turned into a historical place, so then they got all the buildings, houses out, and tried to preserve it as how it was, and now it's a historical monument.
We should thank you.
Yeah. And then this is just something I thought was really cool. I like journals or letters from any time really in history, because it's like they're talking to you. So this was written by a philosopher named Seneca, describing the brutal spectacle that probably greeted Arles spectators. So this is a philosopher who would go there in the Imperial Roman times, and he was just writing about it. So that was cool. He said, "In the morning, men are thrown to bears or lions. At midday, to those who were previously watching them. The crowd cries for the killers to be paired with those who will kill them, and reserves the victor for yet another death. That is the only release the gladiators have. The whole business needs fire and steel to urge men to fight. There was no escape for them. The slayer was kept fighting until he could be slain. Kill him, flog him, burn him alive," the spectators roared. "Why is he such a coward? Or why is he such a coward? Why won't he rush on the steel? Why does he fall so meekly? Why won't he die willingly?" So I just thought that was really cool that he was writing about it, and we have that letter of his, so we can know that's kind of like what it was like. It was very brutal. And that's it.
All right. Any questions? Well, it's one way. You gotta say it the French way. There you go. Well, they usually have an accent, very heavy accent. Usually they leave out the whole end of the word. So like the last couple of letters they don't even use. It's Arle.
Ole. Ole. Hello.
Okay, very nice. Antioch of Syria. Okay, go ahead.
All right. So my presentation was on Antioch of Syria. There are multiple Antiochs around this time. This is one of the two major ones, Antioch of Syria, which was in Syria, and the other one would be Antioch in Pisidia, which was in Asia Minor. This one, you can see it. This little thing, there it is. It's up by in this course over here. Do we have a little thingy?
Yeah. You just press that button right there.
He's on.
Yeah. So Antioch is right up there, and it is, as we see, in Syria. And then Seleucia was actually the port that was associated with Antioch. But it's significant because it was where the disciples were first called Christians. So it's a major center of this time. And once the once the Christians were kind of kicked out of Jerusalem, Antioch is one of the places they went and kind of prospered. Today it's the modern city of Antakya, which covers a large portion of the city.
And it's controlled by
Turkey.
Turkey, that's right.
It is controlled by Turkey. It was originally in the hands of Syria, but in recent times it has been taken over by Turkey, of which we will mention later.
Okay.
Can you use it to move
Oh,
the thing?
you can,
It's good.
but we have to do one thing first.
Oh.
I have to put that in there. No, it should. There. There you go.
All right. So, kind of a brief history of Antioch of Syria. It was first built by Seleucus in the Seleucid Empire, so the empires that came after Alexander the Great in around 300 BC. It was the capital of that empire. This is one of the main roads that was there, which had a lot of construction done on that. It was originally, as I said, made by Seleucus, then it was later made by, it was later improved on by Antiochus Epiphanes, who expanded the wall, and then Herod the Great also did some building projects here. He actually paved this main road entirely in marble, so going out and just being extravagant, Herod the Great, as he always is. And then also you have, I believe it was Emperor Tiberius went and colonnaded the streets. So it was one of the largest cities in the Roman Empire. It was actually the fourth largest city, but then the third largest city got destroyed, so it became the third largest city.
And what was it? Third largest city?
Yeah.
I said what was?
What was? Did I put it on here? I forget. I apologize, but I think
first would
I
be
think
Rome, the
first is
second's
Rome,
probably
Alexandria.
Alexandria.
The third, I forget where it was, but it got destroyed by people.
Yeah. Usually Antioch's
Yeah, so
top
Antioch.
three, top four. Yeah.
So Antioch got to be,
Probably Antioch just,
Top
sent
three.
some people over there so they could be third. Okay, go ahead.
yeah, it's possible. But yeah, so it's kind of debated what the population was. Some people say 100, 250, some 500,000. But either way, it was the third largest city in the Roman Empire, and it was a large center for commercial trade. By a lot of the trade from the rest of the Roman Empire came through Antioch into Asia Minor and all of that area, and Arabia and
For a while, Ephesus,
Ephesus.
was the large,
Yeah, but then
probably
Ephesus,
third largest,
the
but it got destroyed
harbor.
by earthquake and
Yeah.
silted up. It silted
yeah,
up.
the harbor got
Yeah.
silted up, so
That
Ephesus.
might be the other one.
Mhm.
That's what I'm thinking anyway.
I don't think it was Ephesus.
No, all right.
No. Anyway,
Corinth
that's-
was big as well.
Corinth was also big. And I did my other presentation. No, it wasn't Ephesus. It was Laodicea. But anyway, mentioned Ephesus.
Go right ahead.
Anyway, where are we? All right. And like these other cities, Antioch was repeatedly destroyed by earthquakes, but because it was such a major city, the emperors would come in and they would rebuild it, or Herod the Great, or whatever, whatnot. So you do have a lot of the destruction from the earthquakes, but because it's an important city, people would rebuild it. Yeah. So had a bunch of well-known people kind of upkeep the city and make it into what it was. So the church at Antioch is really important because not only is it the first place where people were called disciples, but it also was the site of a controversy that eventually ended in the Jerusalem Council, which was a significant event in the biblical world. So as the people were fleeing from Jerusalem, some of them went to the various areas of the empire, but Antioch was where some people from Cyprus went and kind of preached the gospel, and you would start having people accept that and grow, and the church in Jerusalem sent Barnabas up into Antioch to say, okay, we have this growing population here, let's make sure they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. So he was sent to investigate, and he really was excited with what was happening there. And he reported that back. He went to Tarsus, which is nearby. It's back at a map at the beginning, how Antioch was kind of like, you have the corner there of the Mediterranean. Antioch was here. Tarsus is just like right here. So it wasn't that far of a distance to go and get Saul, or Paul, who was originally from Tarsus. And then they came back to Antioch and ministered there. Then they kind of had this interlude. They went on a missionary journey. And when they're coming back, we have this controversy of some people coming up from Jerusalem to Antioch telling the people that in order to be Christians, you have to be circumcised. You have to follow the Jewish law, which was not what Barnabas and Paul were preaching and telling them. So they went to Jerusalem to talk with the apostles and elders and James, and they eventually got the decision of the Jerusalem Council, is what it's called. So they went, they presented their cases, the other people present their case, and then we have talks from Peter, who tells about his experience with the Gentiles, and we have James, who says that I don't think we should put this on the people. And so they decide not to make Gentiles be circumcised to follow Christ or any other of these things of the law, just not to eat food sacrificed to idols, not to eat meat with blood in it, and
Strangled, yeah.
strangled animals, and then to abstain from sexual immorality. So those three things is all that were required. So it's thanks to this city that we don't have to do that as Christians in order to be Christians. Right? So,
Yes.
yeah. So as for the dig, I didn't get time to put in the animations for the rest of it, so they're all just going to pop up. But the dig began in they started working on getting it in 1933.
Big Depression.
Yeah, so one of the main archaeologists was Charles Morey of Princeton University, who kind of headed the dig. They got invited to kind of come and start digging at the site, and it took a few years to get there, but they finally made it through. The French actually initially asked them if they wanted to go into this area, and then they eventually got that cleared with Syria, who had control of the area at the time. And then
The French had the mandate after World War I. It was under French mandate
French
control. Yeah, League of Nations.
oh, okay, yeah. So I imagined with all
So
the
until
colonialism,
World War II starts, really the French are,
yeah.
there's kind of a transition, but yes, that's why they're talking to the
Yeah.
French. The
Yeah,
French
with the fall of
controlled
the-
Lebanon and Syria
Okay, with the fall of like the Ottoman Empire and all that.
after the fall of the Ottoman Empire in World War I. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, so you had this French control of the area, so the French extended the invitation to Dr. Morey at Princeton to say, hey, do you want to come dig over here? He said yes, so they worked out with the actual Syrians how the work would be
He's
done.
quite famous for, discovering his eel.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead. Sorry.
Yes. Yes, he is.
I want a written apology.
Okay.
You're
Sorry.
gonna need a lot of written apologies and not going
All right, nope. All right, so the actual dig began on March 4th,
Ooh,
1932.
it's almost the anniversary.
It
Yeah,
is.
a little bit past.
A little bit past. But yeah, and the dig was originally supposed to go for 6 years, but they got an extension on that, kind of towards the end of it. This is a picture of one of the houses that they found in Antioch. You can see that they had to dig down a very long distance to get there, so I think it's roughly 10 feet is what they say it is, so you don't have an incredible number of structures just on the
I think that's
surface.
more than 10 feet.
It's possible.
If that guy, unless that guy's
That's
about
true.
2 feet tall.
Okay,
But let's say he's 5 feet tall,
it's 5 feet tall.
and you got 10,
Closer to
15, that's about 20
20
feet.
feet.
Maybe more than 20 feet.
So yeah, so they're having to dig out a bunch to get down to some of this, and a bunch of the, I thought it was interesting because a lot of what we've looked at previously has just been kind of like structures on the top, but for some of this archaeological work, they really have to put in some effort digging and get down in there.
That looks like it's been deposited by water, alluvial, it would be called, because of the way everything is, it's sorted
Yeah,
and it's all pretty consistent, like a flood or something.
okay,
I don't know for sure, I'd have to look, but I mean, that's from looking at the deposits, that would be, and it kind of looks like it's in a valley, so that would make sense, that the stuff runs down the hills and
Yeah.
just build it up.
a little up and over. Okay. Fun stuff. It is near a river. It's near the Orontes River,
Well, there you go.
but also known as Antioch on the Orontes. Similar to Laodicea on the Lycus.
Well, that's where Cleopatra came and, talked to Mark Antony.
Oh,
On the
really?
Orontes, yes.
Oh, really?
She came, he was in Antioch and she brought her boat from the Nile and they sailed up the Orontes and they came back, they had an agreement. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. All right, so in the rest of the excavation, I couldn't find too many actual buildings on the surface, but there were apparently 80 total buildings found. There were 2 theaters, 6 public baths, a hippodrome, and 2 major churches, martyria, which would be a church for the martyrs, and it would have the bones of a saint normally. And then there's a cruciform church, which is just the shape of the church. And then this is obviously aqueduct that's from the nearby city of Daphne, which was kind of a resort area outside the city that rich people would go to, and you had a spring there that was used by the people in Daphne, and then it was brought to the city to help keep that up and running. Then I just have a lot of pictures because Princeton has an amazing online collection. This is some pictures of the Hippodrome. The one on the left is kind of just in the track, and you'll see more of it on the next picture. So interesting to see that. Again, buried underneath the dirt. Had to dig it out. Then here's the picture of the churches. The one on the left is the Martyrion. The one on the right is a church kind of in the area that was the Cruciform church. And again, the Martyrion, it's where it's the Church of the Martyrs or whatever you would call it. So you'd have
Usually
the
have a burial, the
Yeah.
bones of a martyr in the
Yeah.
floor, under the floor.
yeah. So you'd have the bones of the saint or whatever whatnot. And people would come to
Who knows who
See
it
that.
could be, maybe. It's not Barnabas, they claim he's on Cyprus, so.
yeah.
Not Paul, he died in Rome. Well,
Peter
somebody-
also died in Rome.
Somebody famous.
Yeah.
Not me, of course.
Yeah.
Not famous.
Then again, we have just some of the work that was done. This is supposed to be of the theater. I can't see very much of the theater, but in the description it said it was the theater, so probably this area here and
Yeah,
then
they're digging it
obviously
out.
there.
Now,
Yeah.
you see those
And then
guys
this-
on the left, those
we have-
people on the left,
And then these are all the
they have
people
a chain,
excavating.
they have a chain to dump.
Yeah, so
So
the
you take
people
a
would
basket full of dirt,
be, yeah.
pass it like a fire brigade, and you're passing the dirt up to dump it.
Yeah, so you'd have people digging down here,
That's a
someone
lot
off
of
over
people.
here, and they'd dig it all the way out here. Again, we have, I mean, if these people are 5 feet, then that might be even like 25 feet down
Yeah,
to find these things. So
25, 30 feet maybe.
sometimes excavations require a lot of excavation,
They do.
and obviously a lot
of
of
work.
people. All right, and then this is the theater of Dionysus. All right, and then one other thing that they found in the city were a lot of statues and little statuettes that dedicated to the different pagan deities. This one is of Hygieia. Hygieia is what this statue is from. It was a statuette, not life-size. But you also found ones of Tyche, Artemis, or Diana from Ephesus.
It's Tyche or
Tyche?
2K.
2K.
Yeah, if you like it, sort of more like Greek.
2K.
But
Okay.
Usually people say
I can see
Tyche.
that.
It's,
Tyche. 2K.
it's the goddess of fortune or good luck.
Hmm.
And in Roman times, it's called Fortuna, like good fortune.
Okay. Yeah, so you have 2K. I can see that though with the, anyway.
It reminds me of Russian in Cyrillic, or however you pronounce that. The Y is always U instead of.
Well, in Greek,
Yeah,
actually, the upsilon, which you pronounce U, is transliterated into English as a Y a lot of the times. And then the eta, which is the A sound, is basically transliterated as an E, except it would have a long vowel. So if it was tau upsilon, and then it'd be a key, eta, that would be 2K. So I can see
Yeah,
how they would get the
you can look it
translation.
up.
Anyway, so yes, you also have Zeus, Isis, and many more. And Isis actually, Antioch was kind of a big city, so they tried to make it a really large religious center. So they have this story about Isis actually appearing to someone in a vision and asking for her monument or whatever to be brought to Antioch because that's her new place she
Yeah,
wants
she's an
to
Egyptian
rest. But yes, but she's originally an Egyptian goddess, but Antioch tried to
And the wife
get her to
of
come over there.
Serapis.
Serapis.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah. So she is,
Yeah.
Isis became very popular with the ladies as a female goddess of sort of fertility and women, and she's supposedly understood female kind of problems of various kinds, female
Yeah.
issues.
You also find Isis and other female goddesses being very popular just in the Asia Minor area. So
Yes.
this is really near to that. And you can see the influence. A few more of the statues. We have 2K, Aphrodite, and then this statue of a shepherd boy. So, and then another thing that they found a lot of at Antioch,
Yes.
because it was such a
Mosaics.
rich and prosperous city, was they have a ton of mosaics. A lot of them are in black and white because that's what they had, but we have one of just a person, deer probably on a hunt. Then we have mosaics in the floor. And then,
I believe they have some of these at Princeton in a museum. You can
yes,
see them in
they've,
person, but,
yeah, they've lifted them out of the ground in some cases and brought transported them elsewhere. We have a picture of like a mantle, which I don't know why you wouldn't just make a mantle. But
Well, this is a floor.
Yeah.
They would make a scene. Mosaics were normally on floors, although they
Yeah.
can be on walls and even on ceilings.
yeah,
But yeah, the
Yeah, it's a
idea
floor.
here is just like, people put a
Just
picture
random things.
of, rolling hills on the wall in Florida, and there are no rolling hills. It's to remind you of another place or to,
yeah,
let your mind wander to something you probably don't have.
yes.
It's cheaper to have a floor with a mantle and
Then have
a
a
big
mantle.
archway than to build one.
It's true. And then
'Cause
we
I think that's
have
an archway like a doorway, that's what it looks like to me, with
Oh, yeah?
coffers up above, see the coffers.
that's possible.
So
Okay.
anyway, keep
Anyway,
going.
yeah. And then you have all the different fish in the other one. And there are just some cool designs in some of them. For some of the pictures, you have actual 3D images, or what it's like optical illusion 3D. But I thought that was really cool.
Mosaic floors were made, especially this kind, geometric, they would have a pattern book. So mosaic teams would come to do this, say, at your home or in a public building, and they would have a book. The book would have different designs, so you could pick, okay, I'd like this design or this design. And then you could pick colors, and they could change the colors to match whatever you wanted. And then they would go and they used long strips of stone, usually about 2 feet long, limestone usually, sometimes marble, and then they would break them and then set them in place. So they'd have these long strips with all of the colors they would need, break them, put them in place. So they'd have a subfloor, then they would put mortar down, they would draw the pattern on the subfloor, and then they would begin to put this in and fill it in. It was very, very elaborate. Now, for the ones that are very fancy, like with a face or something, those would be made in a shop. Those would be made elsewhere and transported and then set into the floor.
Okay.
They wouldn't make those in place, but this kind of geometric stuff and the borders and all that kind of stuff was made on site, and then sometimes they would have a design of a person or something elaborate. That would be made with much smaller tessera and made in a shop and then actually transported to the site. Sort
Yeah.
of custom made and put in there.
Yeah, so to get all the detail of like the
Yeah, like that on
fish
the left, or even this
or
on the right.
these.
See, you got the border on the
Takes-
outside they would have done there. But that, my guess is, was done somewhere else and set into place. Because that's a lot of detail.
Yeah. And I was actually impressed how they get like mosaic to look
Very small,
that
yeah.
detailed.
Yeah, they were masters of it. Very, very good.
So you have the dig, goes all these things. The end of the dig was kind of unique. You have again, you have the 6-year time limit on the dig, which they extended another 6 years. However, somewhere along the way, Turkey got involved and kind of took over the region that Antioch of Syria is in, and they wanted to impose their own restrictions. So the final like kind of sorting out of the things that the Turkey originally didn't want to let like any of it go, but they worked it out with Turkey and the Syrian government that the Princeton was able to take some of the fines from the dig, and some of the things went to Syria, some went to some of the other organizations that were helping along with this, and some went to Turkey. So Turkey kind of just came in and said, we would like some things from Antioch of Syria.
And this was, of course, with the end of the French control, and Turkey was also allying themselves with the Germans at this time. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of political, as always is, especially in the Middle East, a lot of politics.
Yeah, and then the dig was finally ended before time was up at the start of World War II because the area was just no longer safe to work in.
All right,
These are sources.
thank you.
All photographs courtesy of Princeton Department
Department of Art and Archaeology online collection.
Yes, it's a very large collection.
Something that we
It's
should
very nice.
examine.
It is. It's mostly black and white.
Mostly black and white. All right, excellent. Big city, bright lights, big city.